Gary Bettman has served as NHL commissioner since 1993, a tenure marked by tremendous growth in league revenues, but also a large amount of controversies that have made him arguably the most unpopular commissioner in professional sports. Bettman is relentlessly booed by fans whenever he appears at public events.
Hello, Vancouver! We have some business to do relative to Humboldt. Let's do that, and then you can boo me all night.
From repeated labor stoppages to continuous franchise relocations, TV deals that hurt the sport's visibility, and policies perceived as favoring owners' profits over players and fans. This is why Gary Bettman is the most hated person in the NHL. One of the defining stains on Bettman's legacy is the 3 NHL lockouts that occurred under his watch, each of which disrupted or outright cancelled the season. These labor wars, unprecedented in their frequency for a major sports league, alienated fans and earned Bettman a reputation for greed and dysfunction in the eyes of many fans. Barely a year into Bettman's tenure, the NHL experienced its first extended lockout. In the fall of 1994, owners, backed by their new commissioner, refused to start the season without a favorable collective bargaining agreement, primarily seeking to cap rising player salaries and help small market franchises. Bettman, who was hired from the NBA with a mandate to deliver aggressive expansion and lasting labor peace under the owner's terms, and I quote, insisted on a cap-like luxury tax system that the players' union flatly rejected as a de facto salary cap. The standoff dragged on for 103 days, forcing the season to be shortened to 48 games, which was the shortest in 53 years. Fans were frustrated. Nothing like this had hit the NHL before, and the ordeal proved to be a warning shot of worse to come. In the end, a deal was reached without a salary cap, but bad blood lingered. The lockout, which cut the 1994-95 season in half, planted seeds of mistrust that would resurface in future labor showdowns. If the 1994 episode rattled fans, the 2004-2005 lockout infuriated them. Determined not to lose again, as they felt they had in 1995, Bettman and the owners took an uncompromising stance that they would not allow any season to start without a hard salary cap system. When negotiations with the players' union, NHLPA, stalled, Bettman made the drastic move of cancelling the entire 2004-2005 season, making the NHL the first major North American league ever to lose an entire season to a labor dispute. The Stanley Cup was not awarded for the first time since 1919. Fans were obviously upset. Media and hockey-centric markets blasted the league's leadership for allowing things to reach this point, and the lockout lasted for 310 days. 310 days without hockey. When a new collective bargaining agreement was finally struck in July 2005, Bettman got his salary cap, but at an enormous cost. He even issued a public apology to fans, acknowledging, "I know this won't erase hard feelings, but I owe you an apology for the damage done." By then, the NHL had lost an entire year, countless fans, goodwill, and a reported $2 billion in revenues. The cancelled season remains a black mark that fans have not forgotten. However, incredibly less than a decade later, and for the third time under Bettman, the NHL shut its doors once again. In late 2012, owners locked out the players, seeking to further reduce players' share of revenue from 57% down to an even 50-50 split, and install contract limits. Fans, having endured 2 prior stoppages, were furious at the prospect of yet another fight over money. However, that's exactly what happened. The 2012-2013 NHL lockout began on September 15, 2012. The lockout lasted 113 days and officially ended on January 6, 2013, when the NHL and NHLPA reached an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement. The season resumed with a shortened 48-game schedule starting on January the 19th. Bettman emerged to announce the new CBA and even said sorry to fans in a press conference whilst unveiling the new agreement. The new deal gave owners much of what they wanted: 50-50 revenue split and tighter salary cap rules. But by this point, Bettman had become, in many fans' eyes, the face of greed and dysfunction. The public and media reaction to the third lockout was pure anger and annoyance. Hockey fans are suffering for the third lockout during Gary Bettman's reign. One columnist wrote bluntly, "Each time the league had rebounded on the ice." And indeed, the NHL enjoyed surges in popularity after play resumed. But the cycle of labor wars badly damaged Bettman's reputation. Even today, many fans cannot forgive that Bettman's NHL squandered 3 seasons in less than 20 years due to labor strife. While the lockout strained the relationship between players, fans, and the league, Bettman's vision for the NHL extended beyond labor disputes. Even as fans grappled with shortened or lost seasons, Bettman pursued an aggressive strategy to reshape the league's geography. The 1990s saw the NHL shift its focus toward expanding into the new US markets, often at the expense of traditional hockey cities in Canada, a move that sparked its own wave of criticism. The 1990s were a painful period for Canadian hockey fans. It was the period of relocation of two beloved Canadian franchises to US cities. In the mid-1990s, under financial pressures, the Quebec Nordiques moved to Denver, becoming the Colorado Avalanche in 1995, and the original Winnipeg Jets moved to Phoenix, becoming the Arizona Coyotes in 1996. Bettman oversaw a period in which these Canadian clubs, unable to survive in the era's economics, with a weak Canadian dollar and small local markets, were relocated in hopes of finding greener pastures in the United States. At the same time, Bettman was pursuing an aggressive expansion strategy, focused on growing the NHL in non-traditional US markets, an approach that many Canadian fans interpreted as the league prioritizing American expansion over Canadian tradition. The loss of the Jets and Nordiques left Canadians shattered. Those teams were cultural fixtures. The Nordiques-Canadiens rivalry in Quebec was legendary, and their departures were seen as betrayal by NHL leadership. Meanwhile, Bettman and the owners planted new or relocated teams in places like Phoenix, Miami, Nashville, Denver, and Raleigh over the 1990s. Many of those Sunbelt and warm weather franchises struggled to draw fans or turn profits in early years. Watching half-empty arenas in Phoenix or Carolina, Canadian fans couldn't help but feel that hockey's heartland was being neglected. Season after season, it's hard to watch the league's least cared about teams fail to draw crowds or drum up interest, and now think about the hockey-mad city that the NHL has continued to leave out in the cold. Quebec City, one writer observed. Bettman's perceived neglect to Canadian concerns earned him intense criticism in Canada. He was painted as a big city American lawyer, more interested in TV markets than the sport's soul. When Quebec City later built a state-of-the-art arena and pledged for an expansion team, the NHL deferred Quebec's bid in 2016, citing the poor Canadian dollar and geographic imbalance as reasons for the dismissal of the return of the Nordiques. Instead, the NHL chose Las Vegas as its 31st team. To many, this was confirmation that Bettman favors American markets over Canada, even as Winnipeg did finally regain an NHL team in 2011 when the Atlanta Thrashers franchise folded and relocated. Quebec City remains without a team. The perception endures that Bettman's NHL has treated Canada shabbily, happy to reap Canadian fan dollars but unwilling to put new teams in Canadian cities. The loss of Canadian teams and the league's focus on US expansion weren't just one-time events, they became a long-running theme during Bettman's leadership. Nowhere is more evident in the NHL's relentless effort to keep hockey alive in Arizona, a market that struggled for nearly 3 decades, but was propped up time and time again by the league. The Coyotes franchise, the former Winnipeg Jets, landed in Phoenix, Arizona in 1996, and almost from the start was plagued by instability, financial losses, low attendance, arena issues, and frequent owner turnover. Yet through it all, Bettman refused to let the Coyotes fail or relocate, far beyond what many felt was rational. If you look back, the NHL support for hockey in Arizona has been unwavering to say the least, Bettman remarked in 2023, noting that, and I quote, "There were countless times that we could have made another decision, but we didn't. We believe hockey works in Arizona," and I quote. Indeed, for nearly 28 years, Bettman propped up the Coyotes. When the team went bankrupt in 2009, the NHL took over ownership to prevent a sale that would have moved the team to Canada. He fought off attempts by investors like Jim Balsillie to purchase and relocate the Coyotes to Hamilton, Ontario. Bettman denied deal after deal to keep the club in Arizona. Critics accused him of throwing good money in a desert market that never embraced hockey. Yet Bettman persisted, convinced that the Phoenix area was a vital TV market and that hockey could work in the desert under the right circumstances, and I quote. By the early 2020s, however, reality could no longer be ignored. The Coyotes were evicted from their Glendale arena in 2022 and spent their 2022 to 2023 season playing before 4,500 fans in a college rink. A referendum to build a new arena in Tempe failed in 2023, leaving no viable venue. Finally, in late 2024, Bettman conceded defeat on keeping the team in Arizona. The NHL arranged a sale of the Coyotes to new owners in Utah, and the franchise was approved to relocate to Salt Lake City for 2024 to 25, ending the league's troubled 20-year experiment in Arizona. In the span of a single day, he held 2 starkly different press conferences, one in Phoenix trying to put a positive sign on the funeral for a franchise, and another in Salt Lake City, basking in the excitement development of a new market. The Coyotes saga shows why Bettman faces so much criticism. His unwavering commitment to struggling Sunbelt teams even after nearly 3 decades, while traditional markets like Quebec City were left waiting. Canadian media frequently pointed out that he propped up Arizona for years, but wouldn't seriously consider Quebec City's return. Even many Arizona fans eventually felt ill-served by the endless uncertainty. Bettman's handling of the Coyotes is often cited as a prime example of putting the owner's expansion ambitions and the league's market strategy above the desires of grassroots fans. However, Bettman's focus on US markets wasn't limited to expansion teams. His TV decisions also changed how fans connected with the NHL, and the fallout from ESPN's exit would shape the league's reach for years. A decision early in Bettman's tenure drew widespread criticism was how the NHL handled its US television rights after the 2004-2005 lockout. For years, the league had enjoyed a national broadcast presence on ESPN, the premier sports network, but that relationship faded due to declining ratings in the lockout. In 2005, ESPN walked away from the NHL, opting not to renew its deal. Bettman then struck a deal with the Outdoor Life Network, a relatively obscure cable channel, famous mostly for cycling and fishing shows, that was rebranding and eager for sports content. The result was that when hockey returned in 2005 to 2006, it was largely absent from ESPN and instead airing on OLN, a channel millions of fans had barely heard of. The move was widely seen as a blow to NHL's visibility. 2 headlines no one thought they would be reading in 2005. NHL signs new national TV deal with Outdoor Life Network, quipped the Los Angeles Times. Critics noted that OLN, later renamed Versus, and eventually NBC Sports Network, reached far fewer households than ESPN and lacked Sports Center highlight coverage and cross-promotion that helped keep a sport in national conversation. For years after, the common refrain was, "No one can find the channel." Hockey's profile in the US suffered. Casual fans simply didn't see the NHL highlights on TV as often, and big games on a low-profile network drew weak ratings. Bettman argued that OLN offered more money and commitment to be the NHL's network, rather than a secondary property of ESPN. One NHL executive liked that on OLN, "We will be the single most important sport on the channel," and I quote, whereas ESPN was a servant to 20 masters. In hindsight, however, many view the post-2005 ESPN exile as a mistake that cost the league a generation of potential US fans. For over 15 years, 2005 to 2021, the NHL lacked a consistent presence on the primary ESPN networks, and it's notable that once the league's TV deal with NBCSN expired, Bettman finally brought the NHL back to ESPN in 2021. The last years in between fostered the narrative that Bettman's TV strategy prioritized short-term rights over a long-term fan reach, hurting fan engagement. The fallout from TV deals frustrated fans, but it wasn't the only off-ice issue they had with Bettman's NHL. After the 2005 lockout, the introduction of the hard salary cap and the dreaded escrow system added another layer of frustration for both players and fans. A direct outcome of the 2004-2005 lockout was the introduction of a hard salary cap tied to league revenues. And if anyone doesn't know, a hard salary cap is a strict limit on how much each NHL team can spend on a player's salaries in a season. Bettman championed this system as a means to achieve cost certainty for owners and competitive balance for teams. While the cap did help small market teams afford talent, it came with side effects that have frustrated players and many fans. One major issue is escrow, the mechanism by which a portion of player salaries is withheld to ensure the 50-50 revenue split each year. In practice, if league's revenues fall short of projections, players end up losing some of the contracted pay. The withheld escrow money goes back to the owners. This has become universally hated by NHL players. As one sports law analysis put it, over the past decade, players have routinely had 10% or more of their salaries held in escrow and not fully returned. Chicago Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews bluntly said he just wants his contract to be worth what it says on paper. But right now, it's not that simple, due to escrow clawbacks. In a 2019 survey of NHL player reps, 25 of 31 named escrow deductions as the #1 issue they had with the current system. To NHL players, escrow feels like a stealth pay cut, money taken out of every check. To fans, hearing millionaire players complain about the salary loss might not always elicit sympathy, but escrow has tangible hockey impacts. Occasionally, players have been reluctant to sign long-term deals, knowing escrow could slice into their earnings. However, as of the 2024-25 season, the NHL has cancelled escrow payments, and they've been cancelled for the remainder of the season. The salary cap and escrow system highlighted how Bettman's NHL focused on financial control, often at the expense of players' earnings and fans' hopes. That pattern became even clearer when looking at the league's overall approach, one that consistently put the interests of owners and profits first, sometimes above everything else. Many people see Bettman as the owner's commissioner, someone who puts owners' profits and team values first, even if it hurts players, fans, or local communities. Under Bettman, the NHL has aggressively pursued new arenas for its teams, often funded in part by taxpayer money. Bettman frequently travels to cities to pursue local governments on arena deals. In Calgary, for instance, he openly lobbied for years that the 1990-80s era Saddle Dome be replaced, calling it old, antique, inefficient, and praising the benefits a modern arena would bring. When negotiations over funding stalled in 2017, Bettman issued an ultimatum. Without a new building, there will be consequences that everybody's going to have to deal with, widely read as a threat that the Flames might relocate if the city didn't chip in for a new arena. Fans and civic officials have become frustrated at these tactics. In several cases, including Edmonton and Calgary, enormous public subsidies were secured for new arenas after intense pressure. People call it welfare for billionaires, and point out that Bettman's leverage comes largely from using the threat of moving a team, basically holding a city's team as a bargaining chip. This approach has made him deeply unpopular in some markets, even where deals eventually get done. Some taxpayers resent that Bettman forced their hand, and if a city refuses, the consequence is losing the team. To Bettman, this is just business. To fans, it can feel like emotional blackmail. However, his approach to player safety and long-term health sparked even more criticism, especially when it came to concussions and the growing concerns about CTE. One of the most serious player safety issues of the modern era has been the link between repeated head trauma and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I completely butchered that, but CTE for short, a degenerative brain disease. In this arena, Bettman has drawn intense criticism for what many see as willful denial and obstruction, as other leagues, notably the NFL, began to acknowledge the connection between concussions and long-term brain injury. The NHL under Bettman refused to do so. Bettman himself repeatedly stated that there has been no definitive proof linking hockey-related concussions to CTE. This refusal to admit the risks became a major issue when over 100 former players sued the NHL, claiming the league never warned them about the dangers and downplayed the risk of concussions. Bettman not only fought against the lawsuit aggressively, which the league eventually settled in 2018 for $18.9 million without admitting liability, but he also doubled down in public. In 2016, after an NFL official acknowledged the link between football and CTE, Bettman refused to engage in a public debate on the topic, saying, "Playing hockey isn't the same as playing football." That same year, in a letter to a US senator, Bettman cited the lack of conclusive science and even suggested factors like lifestyle or substance abuse might be to blame for observed brain damage in former players, comments that outraged medical experts. Dr. Anne McKee, a leading CTE researcher, said the NHL was in the dark ages on the issue, calling the league's stance laughable and ridiculous. While the NHL did eventually implement better concussion protocols and rule changes against head hits in recent years, Bettman's refusal to formally acknowledge the link to CTE has been called dishonest and dangerous. Longtime hockey writer Ken Campbell wrote that Bettman was on the wrong side of history in ignoring or downplaying a problem that has quite literally been a matter of life and death for some former players. Several ex-players, including the family of the late Steve Montador, who was diagnosed with CTE, have been vocal in slamming the NHL's approach. Steve's father said that Bettman's stance deeply insulted families like his, who lost loved ones and felt the league was implying it wasn't the hits that did it. While Bettman's handling of concussions left many players and fans disappointed, the league's response to an even more serious crisis, sexual assault within a team, sparked outrage in a different way. In 2021, it came out that the Chicago Blackhawks had hidden a sexual assault claim from 2010. A former prospect, Kyle Beach, came forward to say that he was sexually assaulted by the Blackhawks video coach during the team's 2010 Stanley Cup run, and the team executives, including the head coach and GM, knew about it at the time but failed to act, essentially sweeping it under the rug to avoid distractions from the playoffs. An independent investigation by a law firm commissioned by the Blackhawks confirmed Beach's accounts and detailed the organizational failure. The scandal was a black eye for the league, and fans and the media looked to Gary Bettman to see how the NHL would respond in terms of discipline and accountability. However, Bettman's handling of the Blackhawks case drew widespread condemnation as too lenient and tone-deaf. The league fined the Blackhawks organization $2 million for inadequate internal procedures and insufficient and untimely response for the incident, a sum that many noted was less severe than punishments the NHL has handed out for relatively minor infractions like salary cap violations or scouting violations. For example, the New Jersey Devils were fined $3 million in 2010 for a contract circumvention, and the Arizona Coyotes lost draft picks for an improper tryout, penalties seen as harsher than what Chicago got for an alleged cover-up of sexual assault. Bettman defended the $2 million fine as substantial by any measure, insisting it sends a message, and I quote, "But to many, it felt like a slap on the wrist for a franchise valued in the hundreds of millions." Beyond the fine, Bettman chose not to sanction most of the individuals involved. Blackhawks GM Stan Bowman and another executive resigned in the fallout, and coach Joel Quenneville, who by 2021 was coaching another team, the Florida Panthers, also resigned after meeting with Bettman. However, these departures were seen as coming only under pressure once the report became public. Quenneville was even allowed to coach one more game after the report before meeting Bettman, a decision Bettman later admitted was not the best look. Most controversially, Bettman did not discipline Winnipeg GM Kevin Cheveldayoff at all, even though Cheveldayoff had been one of the Blackhawks front office members in the 2010 meeting about the assault. Bettman excused Cheveldayoff as having a relatively limited role at the time and thus not being responsible. The response from the media and fans was harsh. There was a sense that the NHL cared more about protecting its executives than actually handling the situation. Bettman's tone in press conferences didn't help either. He was defensive, insisted punishments were adequate, and at one point, in a media call, seemed more concerned about whether Chicago's former coach could eventually return to the NHL than about the bigger picture of accountability. As an ESPN article noted that the $2 million fine was less severe than some teams have received for violating cap or draft combined rules. Key figures went essentially unpunished, and that left a bad taste. Beach's lawyer and others also criticized Bettman for not reaching out to Beach until the story blew up, and when Bettman did speak with Beach, it was days later amid public pressure. All of this fueled the narrative that under Bettman, the NHL's instinct is to protect the old boys club of owners and executives. In a case involving sexual abuse and a cover-up, fans expected sweeping action, lifetime bans, massive fines, something more dramatic than just a slap on the wrist. No draft picks were taken from Chicago, and within a couple years, the story faded with little lasting impact on the team, which continues on under new management. As if the league's handling of serious issues wasn't enough, Bettman's decisions on international hockey left fans and players frustrated too, especially when the NHL pulled out of the Olympics in 2018 and 2022. International best-on-best competition, particularly the Winter Olympics, is something many hockey fans and players cherish. NHL players first participated in the Olympics in 1998 and continued every Winter Games, creating memorable moments such as Team USA's 2010 run and Canada's dramatic 2014 gold. However, under Bettman's direction, the NHL skipped the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics and the 2022 Beijing Olympics, decisions that were extremely unpopular with fans and players worldwide. For the 2018 Olympics, Bettman and the NHL owners cited multiple reasons for not stopping the NHL season to send players to South Korea. The travel was far, games would be played out at odd hours for North American TV, and perhaps most importantly, the International Olympic Committee had stopped covering costs like player insurance and travel as they had in past games. In April 2017, the NHL announced it would not participate in Pyeongchang, stating it would finalize its 2017-2018 schedule with no break to accommodate the Olympic Games. We now consider this matter officially closed. This blunt announcement came after months of talks and pleas from the International Ice Hockey Federation, IIHF, and Players Union. Fans and players were left angry and disappointed. Olympic participation had become, as The Guardian put it, a hot-button issue among fans and players, and the NHL's firm decision didn't help ease the frustration. Star players like Alexander Ovechkin openly voiced their anger. Ovechkin initially insisted he'd go represent Russia anyway, though ultimately he couldn't due to his contract. Players felt they were being denied a once-in-4 years honors and experience. Fans felt robbed of seeing the world's best compete on the Olympic stage, particularly fans in Europe and Asia, for whom the Olympics is a rare chance to see NHL talent live. The NHL tried to make up for it with a one-time World Cup of Hockey in 2016, but it wasn't the same. It didn't have the excitement or meaning of the Olympic Games, and reactions were mixed. Bettman's stance was the Olympics brought no tangible benefit to the NHL. He argued shutting the league down for 2+ weeks, risking star players' health, and not seeing any direct financial upside made Olympic participation untenable. As one ESPN piece summarized it, Bettman felt there isn't enough upside for the league between the disruption of schedule, risk of players getting injured, and no profit to justify going. In Bettman's view, the Olympics were essentially a money loser for the NHL, but fans saw it differently. The Olympics were about growing the game globally and honoring the sport. The NHL's no-show in 2018 was widely panned out as short-sighted. Even the NHL's business partners weren't all happy. NBC, which broadcasts the NHL and Olympic Games in the US, expressed disappointment. Fast forward to 2022. Initially, the new 2020 NHL and NHLPA collective agreement included a pledge to return to the Olympics in 2022 and 2026 if agreements with the IOC could be reached. It seemed Bettman had relented due to the overwhelming player demand. The league even built a break for Beijing into the 2021-2022 schedule, but fate intervened. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a massive disruption to the NHL. Dozens of games postponed due to the outbreaks, and by late December 2021, the NHL withdrew from Beijing, citing COVID concerns in China. Skipping the Olympics in 2018 and 2022 gave fans the impression that Bettman only cared about business, not the sport or its fans. IIHF president tried to negotiate, but Bettman argued the Olympics didn't help the NHL's ratings or revenue. However, the league finally did agree to send players to the 2026 and 2030 Olympics, but the damage was done. Fans spent years watching Olympic hockey without NHL stars, and Bettman's reputation took another hit. However, Bettman's media policies frustrated fans closer at home, especially when it came to blackouts and streaming restrictions that made it hard for many to simply watch games they love. If there's one thing that unites virtually all NHL fans in annoyance, it's the league's TV blackout rules and limited streaming options. Under Bettman, the NHL has prioritized lucrative regional sports networks, RSN deals for local broadcasters, but the flip side is that these deals come with strict territorial blackouts that often prevent fans from watching games, even if they're willing to pay. In the era of cord cutting and ESPN Plus streaming, fans find themselves baffled and angry when the game they want to watch is blacked out in the area due to some league media rights. Bettman's NHL has been slow to adapt, frequently citing the importance of protecting local TV rights and attendance. The result? Heavy fan frustration. Supporters vent that even after buying pricey NHL streaming packages, they often cannot watch their favorite team's games due to regional blackouts, which seemingly make no sense. For example, a fan living out of state might be blacked out of their home team's game because it's in their region, despite not getting that channel. Or a marquee national game might be unavailable on ESPN Plus because it's on a local network that the fans don't have. Fans in Canada have faced bizarre situations, like being unable to watch a Sunday afternoon game because it was only on a channel they didn't subscribe to. And if you find this explanation confusing, it's because it is. The whole situation is a mess and has done more harm than good. Bettman has chased short-term TV money over accessibility, and fans feel like they're being double-dipped, paying for cable or streaming, and still not getting the games they want to see. The backlash has only grown in the age of instant streaming, where consumers are used to getting content on demand. Nothing frustrates a modern fan more than seeing this content is not available in your region when trying to watch a live game they paid for. Bettman has acknowledged these complaints, at least superficially. He said things like, "The biggest concern is making sure fans have access to our games." Yet in the same breath, he defends blackouts as a necessity to protect broadcast partners. The league has made some moves to reduce blackouts. The new Rogers deal in Canada promised fewer regional blackouts going forward. But as an international fan, from what it seems, progress has been slow. In the meantime, workarounds like piracy have surged, affecting the NHL's viewership. Even alternative content, like this YouTube video that you're watching right now, the NHL has frustrated myself and other talented creators on the platform by demonetizing fair use videos that use game footage for analysis, commentary, or context. At times, demonetizing a whole catalog of videos. While other leagues embrace fan-made content, the NHL's copyright claims often block videos or strip them of their earnings. It's yet another reminder of how out of touch the NHL is with current times. I've been affected with some of these claims as well, but not as bad as other YouTubers. But if you like this kind of work, feel free to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. All of this is free, optional, and helps the channel a ton. And I really appreciate everyone who's been tuning into these videos and showing support. However, if you want to support the channel even more, there is an option to become a channel member, which is a monthly subscription that directly supports me and my work. I am adding more benefits to the feature, like membership first videos and being able to be featured at the end of each video, but I have to emphasize, this is completely optional. You should stick onto your hard-earned money, and this should be only considered if it's something you're genuinely able to do and have a little extra to spare. Appreciate you guys being here and interacting with the videos, and I try to keep up with all the comments, and all the support means a lot to me. With that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.